Hi everyone, this is your girl Nikita, and welcome to the Perfectly Powerful You podcast. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Perfectly Powerful You podcast. I'm host Nikita, and I trust, hope, and expect you all are having a beautiful day. As you can probably tell, I'm here with my beautiful friend Kaitie. Kaitie, how are you today? Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Nikki. I'm doing so well, so well today. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Because you were out of your hidey hole. So,
I know.
yeah, but in a beautiful way. The comfort of your home where you were resting and recharging and doing what you need to do to be the vibrant soul that you always are. And I'm happy to have this spirit on the podcast because you were exactly what I definitely love, having in my own presence, but also just the energy you bring to every situation, truly. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Today we were talking about, we didn't really have a particular flow for where we wanted to be, but something that came to mind when you walked in the door was talking about taking time to recharge, to be with our own selves, and to really understand what is in alignment with where we want to be, what we want to have and do and create, and also where we can check back in with ourselves and allow ourselves to not only, sometimes our body makes the space for us to come back to self when we maybe are going too much and our body's telling us to slow down. And if we don't slow down ourselves, then it tells us to. But also the time that you take with yourself to check in with yourself and also to release what doesn't feel like it's no longer in alignment with where you want to be, what you want to do, and using that space that you are using for other things that may not be in alignment with you to now create and hold space for even more of what you would love. And that was kind of where we wanted to jump off. And so, Kaitie, because you have now just come out of just a little bit of just checking in with yourself and the hidey hole, if you will, I would love for you to touch a little bit more on what that means for you and how honoring the time you need to take for yourself and also honoring that release to hold more space for more of what you would love in life.
Totally. Yeah, I think as I've gotten older, taking time to just be with myself is huge. I need it. It's something that is a non-negotiable in my life now. I can't not have time to myself. I think there is a level of it can be quite hard to advocate that need sometimes, or even sometimes to recognize when that need is very much needed.
Totally.
And I think this specific week was a perfect example of that, where there was so many things that were coming up for me that I very much was wanting to do, but I could tell that physically, mentally, emotionally, just all the levels, I wasn't in the right headspace. I didn't have the capacity. I was really feeling not my best self. And once I really kind of got quiet with myself and listened to what was coming up, especially upon asking myself, okay, do you really have the capacity to do the podcast with Nikki or to connect with Nikki in the way that I would truly want to be showing up? No, was coming up. Okay, do you have, and then I go down the list of all the things that are coming up, and it's okay, what is coming up? And then listening to that voice of time and space, rest, to just be so I think that's something that I've really developed that relationship with myself just over the years and really getting to know myself more. And I think a lot of times it's just sitting with yourself, asking yourself some questions and kind of just listening to your body as to what comes up naturally and then going with that. And I've also found that, when I've had to express that need to people such as you or other people in my life this week, the people that really truly honor you and respect you and want what's best for you and love you, like they will without question be like, absolutely, like
Yeah.
take the time, I'll be here. And I
Mm.
think that that's something that even if there are people who don't respond in that way, you kind of come to a place of understanding like that's okay. Like it's
Mm.
okay that you can't see what I need right now, and that's
Mm.
okay, but like not to feed into that even, and kind of like
Ah,
just still honoring yourself and coming from a place of like that's okay, but I still need to do me, you know?
yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I think it's just something that yeah, like I cannot go away from now, and taking this time this week to really sit with myself, even though yes, I got sick. And that was
Yeah. Sometimes it happens.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know myself too, and I am somebody where I am a go 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 kind of person.
Raise your hand if you relate.
Right? Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Until now, but
Exactly. So I definitely am a go 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 kind of person, and I think like I've like sorry, at the same time, I'm also working to move slower. So it's
mm,
finding this balance of doing the things while also being intentional about how I move and where I put my time, space, and energy, and moving in a slow and intentional and mindful way, because I have noticed that that's really what my body and soul honors. Like it loves
mm,
slowness and it loves intentionality. And
mm,
I think that yeah, sometimes it gets away from us, but I had to come back to it. And this week was a moment to come back to it.
mm.
And as a result, yeah, like a lot of things now have happened or are happening that I didn't have the ability to say yes fully to.
Ah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, one, I honor you for honoring yourself.
Ah,
I think it's really beautiful for not only being in a space with someone who it's very obvious that there's been some spaces where maybe you haven't honored that,
mhm.
and it comes across in the way that you speak that you're choosing to be more intentional now,
Yeah.
and you're choosing to honor space even when maybe others up until now haven't honored that space, but now you've come to a place within yourself where
Mhm.
you're saying, I'm the only one who can choose me in this way.
Yeah.
And so I'm choosing to do that. And those who love and respect and understand
Mhm.
will just be like, yeah, absolutely. Like totally take the
Exactly.
time. Like I know how important it is for me. And so like please you do you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I also respect that other aspect of you that also wants to go, go, go and do.
Mhm.
And there are things that you want to create and there are things
Yeah.
that you would love to just be a part of in this
Yeah.
world. And at the level of fact, sometimes your body, like your mind is saying, let's do all these things. Like,
Yeah.
I'm passionate, I'm here, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And your body's like, actually, I think now's not the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so for myself, I recognize that when I'm not feeling my 110%, where I can
Mhm.
give my fullest passion, my fullest fulfillment, and my fullest dedication to something, I
Yeah.
feel I'm a little lethargic. I feel
Yeah.
a little maybe more testy than
Mhm.
usual. And I just don't feel like I'm fully present. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's more of that doing as opposed to how am I being while I am doing.
Yeah.
And so for yourself, how did you come to this space within yourself where you asked yourself those questions about like, can't like I would love to do this podcast with Nikki, but I'm not feeling it. What would I love to do instead? How did
Mhm.
you come to this place? And what got you here and what continues to get you to the space of honoring yourself and being okay with that things don't look as you will it
Yeah.
sometimes, but still honoring that it will come to be. It's
Yeah.
because it's there's a lot to unpack there.
Totally. I was like, "Ooh, the layers."
Yeah, always.
Always.
Like an onion and an
Yeah.
ogre.
I like onions. Uh,
Cheers to onions and ogres.
love that. But yeah, oh my gosh, there's so much there. So much
Yeah.
there. Um, I think for me though, this has been a journey, definitely like a very, very intentional, focused journey over the last 4 years.
Ooh.
So if I look back at me 4 years ago, I was a person who was just kind of running on empty,
Ah.
and not necessarily realizing I was running on empty and pushing that
Oh,
that limit
yeah.
constantly. I lived and worked in a city of like Toronto, Ontario, so
Mhm.
you're naturally just constantly in motion. You're around a
Mm.
lot of hustle and bustle and noise.
Yeah.
That hustle culture is very prominent.
Mm.
I was working in a corporate job, so then there's that added to it. And I really believed that I was doing what I was meant to be doing, that I was living the life I
Mm.
was meant to be living. And there was parts of me that felt like, yes, this is true, this is right, this is in alignment. But there was this like inner knowing that this was not it. This was not it at all.
Oh.
And I think for me, it just got to a point where the more and more I ignored that inner knowing, that inner voice,
Mm.
my body got to a point where it was like, well, we're going to have to like show you that like this really isn't working. And
Mm.
I think that like anything this week included, it's like I got to a place, within my health, both mental and physical, where I
Mm.
was not doing well.
Mm.
And that forced me into a position where like I had to stop
Mm.
and I had to sit and I had to just like sit with myself and get really uncomfortable.
Mm.
And it was in that discomfort that I heard the most come up.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you got in the moment, but in retrospect, you're like, whoa, I learned a lot about
Yeah.
myself. Okay. And
Yes.
so what I'm hearing is
Mm.
that you were in a position where you were doing the corporate job, you were feeling like you were in
Mhm.
alignment with some things, and then you were also checking in with, you said, your inner knowing, your inner
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
And so what does this how does this come up for you? What does this feel like for you?
Yeah.
And what made you choose to honor the inner versus the outer world of the hustle and bustle? How did
Totally.
you recognize that within yourself? And how did you, yeah, navigate going from what everyone else is doing
Yeah.
in the city, in the corporate world, versus what feels right for me? How
Mhm.
do I slow down and really check
Mhm.
in with my body?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. For me, I think it just came to a place of like reevaluation of everything.
Mm.
And when I was forced into this situation of having to like find stillness, both within my environment, within myself, like
Mm.
at this point in my life, like there was a lot in motion and it was a very, very, very difficult time. Um, but it allowed me that opportunity to like strip everything back,
Mm.
like the job gone, the city gone, like
Okay.
the attire, like the physical look of it all gone, like so
Okay.
I think by quite literally just like tearing off these like layers that I had been building upon,
Mm.
it brought me to this place of like, oh, there she is. And I
Ah.
think when you have to do that and you have to look in the mirror and really look at yourself, like that's when you see your rawest, most real form. And
Mm.
it's, you're looking at them and you're like, oh my God, you're so raw and naked and afraid. And I need to bring you in. Like, let me bring you in. And
Yeah.
I think that that's what it took. Like, I really had to sit in this discomfort of being so incredibly raw and naked feeling and
Mm.
be like, okay, but like, what's here? Like, what's coming up? And
Mm.
what am I feeling? And it was a very interesting place to be where I felt like the scarcity of it all was like beyond high. Like it was like, this feeling of fear was so incredibly prominent. And yet there was also this sense of just like wonder and curiosity and excitement that I can place those words on it now. At the
Mm.
time, it was just fear. At the time, it
Mm.
was just holy, are we allowed to swear?
Sure.
Okay, it was just holy shit, what is
Yeah.
happening?
I throw the shit bomb every now and again.
Sorry.
Plug your ears.
Yeah. But that was the thing, was like it was literally having to have like an oh my effing god moment.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And I think that not everybody gets that honor and that privilege to actually have that oh my god, what am I doing moment.
Mm.
And sometimes it does happen for people and they listen to it early and they
Mhm.
can be like, okay, like, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to go over here
Yeah.
instead.
Yeah.
But then I think for some people, myself being a part of that, like, you kind of like life pushes you in that direction, it's like a knocking on the door and it's like, hey, answer,
Yeah.
answer.
What are
And
you
then
doing?
sometimes it's like, dude, it opens the door and
Yeah.
it's like,
It's like the Kool-Aid man.
I didn't want to make a reference, but I was going to be like, oh, hey there.
Yeah, it can feel like that. I know, I think there's a quote that sometimes life gives you a tap on the shoulder or a two
Mhm.
by four to the face.
Your girl got a 2x4 to the face.
Yeah, and I think it's also fun in maybe not when you're going
No.
through whatever it is you're experiencing,
Mhm.
but sometimes I know that it's eagles when
Yes.
the babies are ready to fly, the mama eagle makes a nest as uncomfortable as possible because or else they won't leave.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
she's like, I'm gonna put sticks, I'm gonna put these little quill things, like you're not staying here any
No.
longer because like I've had the time to nurture you, I've had the time to like watch you grow, but like now you need to fly.
Yeah.
And it's fly, fly, birdie.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's the two by four if you're
Yeah.
not listening to the little nudges. And so when you were saying, because you said it was 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and I'm
Which is
sure that
wild.
it feels like yeah, it
Probably more like 4 to 5 that this little like itching has happened.
yeah, yeah. And you were something I heard that I picked up on is that you felt this both like you were running on empty,
Mhm.
and you were also saying that there was this fear, this scarcity, this lack, and at the same time, there was this inner knowing of wonder
Yeah.
and something that it was almost, did it feel, what did it feel like for you? Because when I feel scarcity or lack or this sense of push or I'm running on empty, it's like I see that I have something in my mind. It's like I'm putting all my energy
Mhm.
into it, but I'm not giving enough back for me.
Mhm.
But when there's on the opposite spectrum, when I know that I'm in my what I call my flow state, it feels effortless. It
Yes.
feels like I'm full. It feels like I'm like waking up with vibrant energy, and it feels like a pull as
Yeah.
opposed to me forcing or pushing.
Mhm.
And so for yourself, how did you recognize the running on empty, the fear and the lack and scarcity, and how did you move towards the
Mhm.
wonder? How did you move towards that pull for something greater? Did it feel like it came all at once,
Mm.
or did it feel like it was just step by step, or how did that unfold for you for where you are today?
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Oh, it's interesting, like thinking back, because it definitely was like a crawl,
Sure.
a beautiful crawl, a
Love
beautiful
this.
struggling crawl.
Wonderful.
But at the same time, like, God, I honor that crawl, like,
Mm,
because I had to, like, yeah, crawl out of this tunnel that I was in. And I would say I put myself in. Like, I would not say it was any one thing. I think it was just I had been putting myself in this tunnel and I didn't
mm,
realize like where it was going,
okay.
but also not knowing that like that destination at the end of the tunnel, or once the light would be seen, that like that specifically could be exactly what I would want it to be. And I just
Mm,
had to keep faith and know that that light will come.
ah,
And for me, yeah, it was really, really sitting with the fear that was just ever present in my being, and
mm,
asking. I've always been somebody, like, since a young age, where I've always been very curious, like a
mm.
very, very curious soul. My mom, since I was young, I was always the why? Like, let me ask you all the questions and then some, and I will
Yeah,
burn you like out with all the questions I have. But
yeah.
it's just because I've always had this deep sense of curiosity. And then within that, I think that curiosity has always been present within myself to
Mm.
like really get to know myself, to really understand like why I'm feeling the way that I am.
Ah,
And so,
okay.
yeah, so when I was in this position, I think it's fascinating because I look at the person I was and all the things I was doing, and so much of it was from the lens of what I thought other people expected me to be doing, like what life I should be living, what type of job I should be having to seem successful, stable, all those things. And yet, the part of me deep inside that always knew that was not what Kaitie really wanted, that was not like where I wanted to go, was kind of just always there, but waiting for that moment. And I think that in this moment of deep fear, that's when that came and
Oh.
was like, okay, now let's get curious about this. Like, yes, you're feeling scared as anything. Yes, this is really hard and challenging right now, but like you've done hard and challenging stuff. Like, look back, reflect on what you've done up until this point. And I think that for me, when I give myself that grace of recognizing, where I'm at in the now, acknowledging where you've come from and everything
Mm.
you've learned and everything you've gained as a result of those experiences, that's what for me creates this is it's an expansion. So like you feel a
Um,
pull and I feel this level of like it's like a swell, and I've
mm,
come to learn that that's like my big yes. Like that's like the
mm.
big yes energy of like, we're in it now. Like I'm getting chills
Ooh,
just thinking
me
about this.
too. The big yes energy.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
here to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think like we all have that, like you've
Yeah.
said, you get a pull. Some people get like, yeah, like a shiver, and some like whatever it is, like we all have that like big yes.
Yeah.
I think often though, and this is where in that moment I realized, oh, it's not fear. It's actually like excitement. It's freedom. It's now the
Ooh.
possibility. Cause sorry, this might be a bit jumbled, but I've come to see now whenever I'm feeling that fear response, I
Mm,
ask myself, are you really in a life threatening situation?
mm.
Is this a fear that is life threatening?
Yeah.
Or is it the discomfort with change?
Oh, that's a great question to ask.
And more
Yeah.
times than not, it comes up back with, we're just a little uncomfy because we about
Totally.
to change,
Yeah. Totally.
And that for me is what creates that expansion of like recognizing, oh, okay, this isn't a threat. This is
Mm,
actually just discomfort because you're changing, you're evolving, you're shedding,
mm,
you're becoming like more, I wouldn't even say new, just more me.
mm,
And that's where like, yeah, like that fear, it feels like fear, but it's not. It's
mm.
just, I mean, it's fear of the unknown in some ways, right? But
Yeah.
I think there's like a lot of excitement that can be found in that discomfort.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. I would love to again honor the big yes.
Yeah.
I think that the when I'm checking with myself and my big yes,
Hmm.
it's because I'm actually looking towards myself as opposed to what I heard you say,
Yeah.
what like other people are expecting of me, what everyone else is doing around me.
Yeah.
And what came from what you said, like this deep sense of fear,
Hmm.
what ended up coming from it was this great sense of heck yes.
Yeah.
And I think that something to be honored is something that I love to remind myself
Mhm.
is that like the deeper you go, the higher you'll go as well. Because when you get really, really deep, what's the opposite of that?
Yeah.
Something really, really high, like
Yeah.
something major, that
Yes.
big, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that at least for myself, I understand what that big yes is because I understand what's a heck no. What is
Yeah.
an absolutely not? What is
Yeah.
a fear? What's the lack? What's the scarcity here? Like, what's the worst possible thing?
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, you can say, well, what's the best thing?
Yes.
What is that? What is that? Yes.
Yes.
And I also heard you saying that it was retrospect. It was even though you're in this present current state of uncomfortability in what you were experiencing 4 years
Hmm.
ago, that you were also saying, but I've been through so much
Hmm.
already. Like, let's reflect. Let's
Hmm.
see, let's build evidence and
Yeah.
let's really like pull from where I've already been strong,
Yeah.
where I've already said yes to things that I was uncomfortable at
Yeah.
first, but I did it anyways.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that's a really key component
Mhm.
for being able to pursue and also hold space for the even greater, is to allow yourself to ask those curious questions,
Yeah.
to say, is there actually danger
Yeah.
on the other side of this? Or am I just a little bit uncomfortable because
Mhm.
I'm transforming, because
Yeah.
I'm evolving, because
Yeah.
I'm holding space for something new that wasn't in my life up until now, and I actually have no idea what to expect from this.
Yeah.
And that can be a little uncomfortable
Yeah.
because predictability is comfort and safety.
Yeah.
But when we're holding space for something greater, it's unknown.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think evolutionarily speaking, that the unknown is scary,
Yeah.
and the unknown triggers a lot within our nervous system
Totally.
to say, I don't know what to expect from this, so let's go to something I do know, even if it's still uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And so how did you find, like, I'll keep asking these how questions, but like, how did you find that within yourself? You said that you are naturally curious,
Yeah.
naturally asking yourself these questions, but I also heard you say stillness.
Yeah.
And so I would love for you to touch a little bit more on like how you came to the space of uncomfortability, but still pursuing your dreams anyways.
Yeah.
And also how you recognize that stillness is very important in your practice, and how you
Mhm.
implement this to continue to live the life that you love living, and
Totally.
holding more space for that.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So within that journey, I actually also opened up my world to yoga.
Oh,
So that was something, especially when, the pandemic was happening, everything
mhm.
kind of closed down.
Yeah.
Um, I was somebody that was very much like having to move my body every single day. And so
Mm,
then to not have that um place that I could like kind of hone in on,
mm,
I had to find other means. And that was where yoga became that place for me.
mm.
And something that, so now like every single morning I do yoga, the asana practice.
Oh,
But I do, which is just like the postures, so like the physical movement.
okay.
Yeah.
Sure. I was like, I'm not sure what the asana. I'm not very familiar with yoga. I just know that I like to stretch and move my body. Asana, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So this is just putting yourself into various positions
Yeah.
and
So
holding them.
asana is like what people would most likely associate with yoga.
Oh, sure.
Asana is one of the limbs of yoga, which is the physical practice.
Okay.
However, there's 8 limbs to yoga.
Whoa.
And so you can certainly delve into other areas more than just the actual physical practice itself.
Yeah.
But for me, I found like my best place of clarity of like getting it, like really like getting aligned with myself was through the physical practice.
Okay.
But it was definitely also in the morning or even towards the end of the day, I like to kind of have like a moment of just grounding.
Hmm.
So specifically I'll talk about like my evening practice, which is like my gratitude practice.
Hmm.
And it's a time for me to just kind of go through my day. So especially during this time where things were looking hella bleak, I told myself like, hey, like this is uncomfortable right now. This isn't where we want to be. However, like you're here today, like you're
Hmm.
doing the day. And
Hmm.
that right there is an honor and a privilege that
Hmm.
you need to recognize and
Hmm.
pay gratitude towards. And so I really started to get into gratitude practice, and how much that has like transformed my life is something that I can't not do it now.
Hmm.
And it started as something I would do mostly throughout the end of the day. And I find now in my, like where I am now in my life, it's something I do throughout my day instead. And then I do like a bigger one towards the end of the day. But I call it my thank yous. And it's just simply going through the day and being, very clear about like, thank you for the beautiful weather we had.
Yeah.
Thank you for the walk that I went on. Thank you
Hmm.
for like the conversation I had with my parents or a friend that day or a stranger that I passed by. Like
Yeah.
it forced me into a place of having to look at each day and saying thank you for everything that happened that day, even the things that were challenging, that were struggles. I would still pay thanks to those
Mm.
because there was a reason I needed to experience that challenge or that
Ah,
friction
yeah.
in order to like grow more.
Oh.
And so, yeah, it just, I think for me, that's where when I really just sit with myself and I allow what comes up to come up,
Mm.
then I can not only pay gratitude to the things that I've experienced that day, but I can also really reflect on the day and I can really, say, okay, like, what would I love more of, or what do I want to
Mm.
do less of, or what are things that like felt good and what were things that
Mm.
maybe didn't feel as good, so you can really start to build out that conversation with yourself. And
Ooh.
me and my inner self, we have a pretty dang good conversation every now and again.
It sounds like it. I'm very
Yeah.
inspired. I got a lot of just really great chills of because I have a gratitude practice as well, and I think it's understanding why you do it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll just have gratitude, and I would do the gratitude practice, and I was doing it, but then it's checking and saying, Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why am I giving thanks?"
Yes.
Well, I'm giving thanks because it's a brand new day. I'm giving thanks because for some reason I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. I'm
Yeah.
so thankful to be here.
Yes.
And yes, there may have been things that came into my life
Mhm.
that I may not have loved
Yes.
as much,
Yeah.
but there's a reason.
Yeah.
And I choose to honor that reason. I
Yeah.
choose to honor that if this came into my bubble, I choose to believe that we attract everything in our sphere.
Totally.
We attract every single person,
Totally.
we attract every single good thing,
Yeah.
and every single quote unquote bad thing,
Yeah, yeah.
because everything's subjective, but everything, like, we are this essence,
Mhm.
and this is what I choose to believe.
Yeah.
And so when I recognize and honor that, I'm like, okay, I'm like, for some reason, like you said,
Yeah.
I was meant to experience this friction,
Yeah.
or I was meant to experience this really amazing heck yes day.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful and I give thanks because thanks energetically puts us in a
Mhm.
frequency of abundance,
Yeah.
of I actually have something in my life
Yeah.
to give thanks to,
Yeah.
as opposed to resentment or hate or judgment or fear or lack or
Mhm.
scarcity, because that has a different feeling tone.
Yeah.
But if we know that, if we continue to say, "Uh, this was sucky and I hated this and I don't want this," then energetically that's what you're giving off and that's
Mhm.
what you're going to receive more of.
Totally.
But I think it's also okay to honor that
Yeah.
this was sucky. I didn't like this and I
Yeah.
would rather have less of this in my
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
And also to bring it on back. And I love that you mentioned honor everything that comes up,
Mhm.
that stillness practice, to say, okay, like, what's here for me right now,
Yeah.
because every time we shove it down and
Yeah.
say, I don't want to feel these feelings, they're uncomfortable,
Yeah.
I hate them, your body's storing them anyways.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Tension.
in the essence of releasing,
Yeah.
I think that we can hold space for more gratitude by
Totally.
allowing and honoring those spaces of, this was not my favorite,
Yeah.
but what is this anxiety? What is this doubt? What is this fear telling me?
Mhm.
And how can I just like sit with myself and have
Yeah.
a really great conversation with
Yeah.
my inner self? And also, how can I then like honor this but not dwell?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
the feeling of dwelling for me is just like, it goes from honoring and feeling to it feels very it feels like it sits heavier.
Yeah.
I think that's what dwelling feels like for me.
Totally.
And I know that there's a point when I ask myself, I'm like, is this actually helpful?
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that says, actually, this is really helpful right now. Like,
Yes.
I need to
Yes.
actually cry this out.
Yes.
I need to like scream in my
Yes.
pillow. And
Yes.
then there's a feeling where I'm now perpetuating and over
Yes.
perpetuating. And that's when I feel like, if when I
Oh.
ask myself, is this helpful? And if the
Mhm.
answer immediately feels no, I'm like, okay, I'm like, how can I put this on a shelf?
Mhm.
And now all the space is empty, because when we get it out, what my life coach tells me is like, we got to fill it back up with something, because
Yeah.
it's empty space in our body vessel now.
Yeah.
So we fill it up with gratitude.
Yeah.
We hold that space. And for myself, that's why I have my gratitude practice and the
Totally.
thank yous, and saying
Yeah.
like, Thank you for the conversation I had with a complete stranger. Thank you for
Yeah.
the amazing podcast I'm having with one of my best friends.
Yeah.
Thank you for this cup of tea that we've clean water today, because at the level of fact, a lot of the water in town has been dirty and
Yes.
mucky, and it's just because they're cleaning things out. But I'm thankful for this clean cup of water tea.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm so thankful for this clean, like I can have tea
Yeah.
because, well, globalization means like there are spices
Yeah.
that wouldn't normally grow in Canada, but I have
Exactly.
them here. So thank you
Exactly.
for all the hands in the making
Yes.
of this clean water, of the
Yes.
fact that I get to enjoy tea and sugar and milk because that's what I choose to have in this. But it's just like sometimes we can, up until now, I'll say for myself, get caught up in the fact that this all exists around
Yeah.
me.
Mhm.
And when we realize that sometimes we strip away everything,
Yeah.
and sometimes we are in lack and scarcity, and that comes up into our sphere to add contrast to the fact that
Mhm.
we have everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the moments of friction
Mhm.
is just contrast to say, but look at all the places where you had abundance.
Exactly.
You had maybe some discontent with this one person, but look at the people who are saying, like, you're doing great, like,
Yeah.
keep going. I'm so
Yeah.
proud of you.
Yeah.
So it's just like one is not right over the
No.
other.
No.
We get a choice to choose our perspective.
Totally. Totally.
And I think having the gratitude practice is such a beautiful way to designate that time to
Yeah.
say, not everything was my favorite today.
No.
However,
Yeah.
I definitely am so thankful for just getting to experience today
Yeah.
and right now. And I think that is something, I appreciate that you implement, because it's very obvious in the way that you come across in life,
Oh.
the conversations you have, the depth of self, the way that you have this such vibrant positivity that it's invigorating. And people who continue to do that, like yourself, are so much more lovely to be around, but
Yeah.
they're also inspirational to be like, I want more of this. Like, how do you do this?
Yeah.
And so I would love to close off shortly here, but how do you, and what would you love to leave people with for your gratitude practice, or releasing what no longer serves,
Mm.
how to honor what no longer serves, because I think that we can get intuitional about it, but for yourself,
Mhm.
um how would you recommend people release what no longer serves to get
Totally.
to understand, while also being able to bring in what
Mhm.
feels like a heck yes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how people might tap into their heck yes?
Ooh, yeah. Oh, that's a really good one. I think from my experience, again, like I would definitely say it's been a 5-year long journey of really, really honoring myself. I call, like, this journey has been my self-love,
Mm,
self-care practice and journey.
mm,
And within that, I've developed rituals that, again, are like non-negotiables for me. They fill
yeah,
my cup
yeah,
so that I can then show up as my best self, so that I can be this way.
mm,
And as I've really honored that more and more and more, I've come to see that, those moments of like kind of coming down are far less, that I'm
mm.
able to like bounce back a lot more as a result of that.
Oh,
So that resiliency has definitely, my God, it's developed tenfold. But I think it just comes from a place of like, if you are feeling any level of like what you may consider like unhappiness or discontent, or yeah, like if you're just experiencing a lot of, tension and discomfort, and you're just kind of always feeling like, ugh, like if you're feeling ugh a lot in your day,
yeah,
and especially if you wake up first thing and it's a ugh, that right there is a huge, huge like flag, I would
yeah.
say. And
It's a
that's
little
where
tap on the shoulder.
totally is. Let me tell you right now, that do be a tap, okay?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think if that's something that is coming up for you, it's because you're not listening to yourself.
Mm,
And I think that often, and especially in like today's world, because we have things like our phones and social media,
mhm.
we don't really know how to sit with boredom, and we don't really know how to sit with ourselves, because for a lot of people that is boring. But I really
Mm.
do believe that when you are forced to sit with yourself, and if you are feeling this ugh every day, you need to sit with yourself. You need to get bored. And I
Ah.
think from that place is where that curiosity stems. And I think we see this in a lot of, artists, especially, like, when they're bored, they create, and I think
Mm.
that's where, like, you don't have to be an artistic person to create the life that you want, but you do have to get bored. You do have to allow your brain the ability to, like, not be so overstimulated, to
Mm.
not be constantly taking in information,
Mm.
because you have all the information you need.
Mm.
You just have to let it come up, and you just have to sit with it, and you need to address those things. And you don't necessarily have to, like, attach yourself to any one thing. That's a huge thing within meditation. You allow what comes up to come, and you simply, you look at each thing, and you don't
Mm.
attach to any one thing. You recognize it, you allow that space for it to be there,
Mm.
and you let it go. um and that's, I'm not saying this is an easy thing. Like, it's
Yeah.
not an easy thing to
No.
do. And for so many people, I'm sure, like, the first few times is going to feel awful. Just awful, because yeah, you're just being, like,
Yeah.
we've forgotten as people just how to be in its
Mm.
simplest, most, you know like, yeah, just the most simplest form possible. To just be is
Mm.
really hard, because we've been told, you have to be something.
Mm.
And instead, it's like, you actually don't. Like, you get
Yeah.
to be you, and
Yeah.
that's hella cool.
Yeah.
And to just sit in that for a hot minute and be like, let me just be me for right now,
Yeah.
and get, like, curious with that and see
Mm.
what comes up. And yeah, there might be things that, like, right away, like, and believe me, like, your body will do that. It'll bring up, like, maybe a relationship you have, whether
Mm.
that's romantic, professional, or friend, whatever it is. Like, something will come up. It's like, ooh, interesting, let's make a note of that. So yeah, maybe you need to write that down. Maybe you need
Mm.
to come back to that and kind of get curious with that a little bit more,
Mm.
or I don't know. Like, for me right now, travel is a huge, huge part. It's been a huge part of my life that has consistently come up whenever I've sat with myself, of like, what do I need? And I think
Mm.
naturally being curious too about people, places, things,
Yeah.
traveling is something that always has come up. And so I'm finally at a place now where I'm honoring that. I'm
Mm.
honoring that need to go and explore and to get more curious with the
Yeah.
world and the beautiful people that I know I have yet to meet but are there. Like,
Yeah.
that's so exciting to think about.
Mm.
But it
Mhm.
comes from that place of, like, having sat with myself and having said, like, okay, what's coming up? Let's get a
Yeah.
little bit bored. Let that brain kind of wander where it needs to. Let's see what comes up, and then let me get curious with it. So I
Mm.
think, yeah, get curious with yourself. Give yourself the grace to know that, like, things might not always be what you want it to be, but
Yeah.
there's a reason, there's a place for it. Give yourself the grace to be like, if today's not a great day, if I'm not loving it, that's okay, because tomorrow is a new day. It
Mm.
sounds so corny, but it's so incredibly
Yeah.
true. And, like, allow yourself to have the days where you need to move slower, where you need rest, because my God, it does wonders. And
Mm.
then the next day, you hit the ground running or crawling.
Or crawling or skipping.
Or whatever. Also,
Yeah.
yeah, let's bring back skipping. I've started skipping again,
Me
Nikki,
too.
and it is the best.
I love skipping. There's
Yeah.
something so jolly about
Oh,
it.
it
Yeah.
brings back, like, this inner childlike joy that I'm just like, this is
Mm.
the best thing
Mm.
ever.
I love the way you ended this, and there's so many more things I wanted to touch on, but we would be here for hours. And so if you would
Another
love,
time.
yeah, like I'd love to have you back on the podcast, and I'm sure everyone else
Yeah.
would as well. You were such a beautiful nugget of information, and I appreciate just the wise words. I know many, many people are probably going to love like listening to the conversations again because this is just so beautiful.
This is
So
so fun.
yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I I hope that you guys are all having a wonderful day and that there was something that inspired you, something that piqued your interest. I know my interest is so piqued, and there are certain things that I would love to continue to get bored and get curious
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure, and to learn how to unwind a little more and
Mhm.
to like destimulate a little bit in
Yeah.
order to allow the creativity to flow even more, because
Yeah.
I know that the more space you hold for yourself in that stillness, the more you're able to allow to come up with what feels even greater. And you'll
Yeah.
know for yourself what feels good and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're unsure, I mean, get bored, get curious.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much for joining today. I
Thank
hope you have a wonderful day. Kaitie, thank you so much for being here with us
thank
today.
you.
And may you all have a beautiful rest of your day. And I look forward to talking with you all very soon. Thank you all so much for joining me today, because it is my absolute pleasure to be here with you. For those of you who'd love to take your success one step further, I've included a link down below for a complimentary strategy session with me. Here, you and I will work one-on-one to hone in on your vision for the life you'd love living and develop some steps from how to get from where you are now to where you'd love to be. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on today's content and any inspirational golden nuggets you learned from today's podcast. Be sure to give this video a 5-star review, because it helps in creating even more awesome and expansive content. May your day be filled with only love and light, and I look forward to talking with you all very soon.